I wanted to go back for a minute to, you're talking about death and playing with Chuck on spiritual healing. And I was listening to it a couple times this week before we did this interview, just thinking about, that album and what you had done on it. You mentioned a little bit writing with Chuck. He would kind of show you something he had, and you would kind of jump into it. What was it like writing with someone? I know he had such a, it seems like he had such a clear vision all the time. He had so much creative control. What was it like writing with someone like that? Was it mostly a smooth process?
I honestly think that that's a reputation that he developed later on in his career.
Okay.
I don't think it was really so much the case on the first three albums, because I know he had co-writers on the previous two, and certainly when I joined, right away it was like, oh, cool, man, let's write this together. What do you got? You got some riffs? You know what I mean? It was easy as cake. It was so easy.
Wow.
There was nothing to it. And I honestly don't think that he rejected anything that I presented.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't have expected that.
And like I said, some of the times I was literally, he said, hey, dude, you got a part that will go with this? And he played me something, and I would go, oh, yeah. And I would pick up my guitar, and I would just play the first thing, whatever that part made me feel, I would just play it.
Yeah.
I would just come up with it on the spot, I mean, I know my intervals well enough. I hear something in my head, I can generally play it,
Yeah.
And so I would just, however what he played me made me feel, I would hear it in my head. I would go, okay, yeah. I might falter a little bit the first couple of times, but he would hear what I was coming up with. And then as I got it together and played it for him properly, he would, if I didn't do it right off the bat, he was usually like, yeah, that's cool.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, it was, I understand that he had that reputation, but I have to think that part of it, I mean, I'm talking only about the writing, side of things. And, but for me, when I was in Death, the writing thing was super, super simple. I mean, Terry jumped in there too. Terry had riffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
And he contributed his riffs as well. And it went great. It was so smooth, so much fun. We had so much fun during those writing sessions. It wasn't stressful at all. Stress didn't start really happening until the road.
Okay, sure.
When you get on the road, you got, people from completely, they just came up completely differently,
Yeah, sure. I'm sure.
And, Chuck came from a certain, kind of family. I came from a different kind of family, and we get along great during the writing process. But, sometimes you get on the road and sometimes you find out things about each other that because you're, when you're writing, you get to go home, like I think I spent one night a week at Chuck's house during the whole writing process.
Okay, sure.
But then we get on the road, you're spending every night together, every day, every moment together. And, you start,
different.
When you're in your early 20s, and you got more than one strong-minded person in a group, it starts to become an issue. But certainly that was not the case with the writing. He was very, very, very easy to write with, and very easy to get along with during that time,
Yeah.
And, and I'm sure I was too. And, I want to qualify, because I've sort of alluded to the fact that things got weird on the tour. I don't want to come off sounding like I'm pointing a finger,
Okay.
Because if I'm going to point a finger at somebody, I also have to take my other hand and point the other, another finger at myself.
Sure.
I was young and headstrong, I was in my early 20s, and I have my own ideas about things,
Yeah. Sure.
And so I was headstrong, and I'm sure that from his point of view, I was being quite the dick. And when I look back, I was like, maybe that was maybe dickheaded. Of course, then I would point at things that he did, and, in my opinion, that was dickheaded that he did that. You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
That's what happens when you're out on the road and you're young.
Yeah,
it's
of
just,
course.
Personalities sometimes clash, but I'm certainly not pointing a finger of blame, away from myself, at least certainly not without pointing the other one back at me.
Yeah. I gotcha, man. I know, because we're listening to it, it sounds like you guys were having a good time. Like the song Low Life, I think is the one with the soloing. Were you guys kind of soloing back and forth on that one?
Yeah, I believe so. If I recall
it just
correctly,
comes off
we do a trade-off.
Yeah.
Me and Chuck Styles really complimented each other really well at that time. And I know, he told me at the time that, he wanted a guitar player in the band that would drive him and push him to be better. And that he felt that I was, that I fit the bill really well in that regard. And,
that's cool.
I honestly do believe that that album was the album the first death metal, full-on death metal album that came out and showed the world, hey, it's cool to play good solos, melodic solos,
right,
on a death metal record. And,
yeah,
I actually had a couple of the guys from Carcass tell me that one time, that sort
wow,
of, that album gave them the confidence to start doing that on their records.
that's really cool.
And I think, and they really started with that on, I think, like their third disc, Necroticism. And it only went from there, like, even more. And because those guys are great guitar players, And, but I think, prior to that album, people just thought you had to fucking yank on the whammy bar like Kerry King,
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, that's what's.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what's cool about it, man. I mean, like it's the, listening to it now, it sounds like such a transitional album, adding in the melodies and all of that. Is that something that, do you think that was a big part of just you coming into the band with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really weird story how I got the gig. I mean, okay. I think Chuck was growing tired of the whammy bar thing.
Okay, sure.
Of course, he didn't play them. He didn't even have a bar on his guitars. But, his second guitar player at the time, Rick, that's Rick's shtick, and Rick's really good at it. And, absolutely I'm not throwing any shade when I say that, Rick was a whammy bar guy, because, Rick was kind of the whammy bar king, and, he owns that and he's good at it,
Okay,
and, yeah. It's definitely coming from a good place in me, I think that there's a place for that, and I think it sounds great. And I think he did a great job. Like, I love Rick's stuff on Leprosy. I mean, I didn't play it because Chuck didn't want me to, and it wasn't really my style to go that crazy on whammy bar. I use it a little bit more expressively within a melodic context. But when I ran into those guys one time, I had already done a tour with the band Agent Steel. Right. So I had sort of started my career as a touring musician by getting a touring gig in the band Agent Steel. It was right before their, I think, second album, their third release, because they had an EP as well, I think, for Combat Records back in the day, back in 1987. Their album Unstoppable Force was about to be released, and they relocated from LA to Florida. And they started advertising for Guitar Player, and that happened to be the time that I was looking really hard to find a band, And in 1988, I went into Tampa for a show at the Sunset Club, which doesn't exist anymore. And it was Death, and they were supporting Leprosy. And I had seen those guys before, but I had never really talked to them, And I certainly had never really met Chuck. I had seen the other guys around, But I kind of knew what his voice was like a bit from him talking on stage, and whatever, on some of the small shows that I had seen. So I went to this show, and I had decided that night to wear one of the Age of Steel shirts that I got on the tour that I had done. And so I'm wearing this Age of Steel shirt. It's only a year old, so it looks nice and new still. And I get out of my car, and I talk to a few people, and then I head for the door of the Sunset Club. Lots of people are still milling around outside. It's still day. It's still pretty light outside. And as I'm almost to the door, I hear, "Cool shirt, dude," And I'm like, why do I kind of recognize that voice? Kind of sounds like a California beach guy, like a surfer dude or something. And I turn around and look at who it was, and it was Chuck. He was standing there talking to a couple of fans, I guess,
Right, sure.
And I'm like, "Oh, hey, man, how's it going?" Like, "Oh, good to meet you." We just started talking. And from there, I met the rest of the band. We hung out a couple of times during that night. And I actually was doing some interviewing here and there for a Dutch fanzine. And so I said, "Well, hey, let me interview you real quick for this Dutch fanzine." So I did. And we went across the street to do that. I took a couple of pictures against a building over there. And we're just shooting the crap. But during the course of this, I had kind of noticed that Chuck, Bill, and Terry were a little bit snubbing Rick. Not too blatantly, not too openly. He really acted like he kind of could see it, but didn't care,
Okay, yeah.
He would just kind of, whatever, dudes, and walk away, And I would see them guys kind of roll their eyes, and I thought, well, that sucks, Definitely sucks for Rick. That's a bad dynamic, but who knows? I don't know. I don't really know any of these guys. Maybe there's just cause for it, And you know what? If I were running a band, if I had my own band and there was someone that I felt like I had to roll my eyes about, they probably wouldn't be in the band long, So I thought maybe, who knows? So I said, "Hey guys, not to overstep any boundaries here or anything and stick my nose into anything, but if for some reason you guys were to ever part with Rick, here's my phone number. And I think Terry took it and stuck it in his pocket. But, Chuck right off the bat, when I started talking to him, when he caught me at the door, was like, "Oh, you're that guitar player that got the..." He asked me where I got that shirt. And I said, "Well, I basically earned it, touring with the band." He goes, "Oh, you're that guitar player I heard about that got the gig." And I was like, "Yeah." So he already knew. And it turns out Chuck was a big Agent Still fan. Huge Agent Still fan. Loves them. So, and he knew the guitar player that I replaced. And he knew that guy was really good. Really, really good. And no joke, Bernie blew me away back then. I could barely passable versions of his solos when I on that gig. He smoked me. But trying to learn those helped improve me. Like it actually helped me. Made me a better guitar player. But Chuck knows you can handle it. Wow, you can handle Bernie Versailles, solos. You must be pretty damn good. So, had he not had that sort of background in his mind, me offering my thing, they probably would have politely taken it and it would have been lost.
Yeah.
But they had a clue that perhaps I actually could play.
Right. Yeah.
And,
for sure.
and they clearly were not completely happy with Rick, so they held on to it. So shortly after that gig, though, I moved to Atlanta because I wanted to go to the Atlanta Institute of Music. So through some mutual connections, I met the guys. I met Dave Stewart of Hallows Eve over the phone. He was looking for a roommate and possibly someone to jam with him in a resurrection of Hallows Eve. And so I moved to Atlanta, and out of the blue, Chuck called me. Said, "Hey, man, we fired Rick."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Wow." And but you won't believe this. Now, I've told this story before, but I actually turned him down. I told him.
Really?
Yeah, I told him.
And you were a fan at this point, correct?
Yeah, a big fan.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I had both. I had Scream and Leprosy. I loved the band.
Okay, sure.
And but I said, "But I'm jamming with these guys, with Hallows Eve now, and I just moved here like 5 months ago. I'd hate to just let these guys down." And so I get off the phone with him. He's like, "Okay, well, sorry to hear that, but good luck, and that's cool that you're loyal,
Yeah, sure.
Take it easy, And so I got off the phone with him, and Dave, like I said, Dave from Hallows Eve was my roommate, and he asked me, "So how'd it go? What?" Because he's the one that took the call. I was in my bedroom,
Oh, okay.
and he comes knocking on my door and goes, "Oh, hey, dude, I think Chuck from Death is on the phone for you."
Yeah.
So when I got off the phone, he was naturally curious how it had went. And I said, he basically told me that the gig in Death was mine. If I wanted to come, it'd be kind of a tryout, but he was pretty confident in my ability, come on down, And, it was subject to a tryout. So I told him, I said, well, he offered me to try out for Death, an almost guaranteed position, unless I just go down there and completely blow it. But I told him that I'm, committed to working with you guys, And I was expecting, I think I was expecting, "Oh, cool, man, that's awesome."
Yeah.
What I got was, "Are you fucking crazy? Are you
At least you
fucking
went
crazy?
Around it the right way, though.
You got a chance to play in Death, and you turned it down." So I immediately went and tried to call Chuck back.
Yeah.
Well, again, this was 1989 at this point.
Okay.
1989, I had moved to Atlanta, and there was people still didn't have cell phones, man. It was still 10 years away from people starting to have cell phones. And so I called and I reached his house, and his mom answered, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, Chuck. She didn't know who I was from Adam then. You know, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, Chuck. Chuck left. I don't really know when he's going to be back. He might have gone to his girlfriend's or out to rehearsal or something. And he's either won't be back till late tonight or tomorrow sometime. And late tonight. Okay, he lives with his mom. I won't be able to call late tonight.
Yeah,
you wake up old people. They get mad. So I figured I just got to call him tomorrow. So I waited till the next day and I called him, and I caught him, and he goes, "Yeah, well, what I did after I got off the phone with you, man, was I called this other guy we had as like a backup in case you didn't work out. This guy, Mike."
Damn.
And so then where I went last night after that was to rehearsal to try him out. And he came down and he played, and he was really good. And we all got along with him really good. And we told him already he has the gig. And I was just like, oh, I was crestfallen. It was a total bummer. And I just said, look, I've already told because that was like a Friday. And I said, I already told my work that I was gonna, I had already taken the day off. And I
Okay,
said,
yeah.
I had already took the day off from my work and already planned to drive down there today, be there for the weekend, and try out for you guys, see how
Yeah,
it goes.
yeah.
Come back up and get my stuff if it works out. So I'm going to come down anyway. I've already told my family I'm coming, everything. I didn't think you guys would, fill the spot that quick.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm already coming. So I'd love to at least meet with you guys somewhere. I can play for you. So just in case this guy doesn't work out, you'll already know that
Yeah.
you
You can do it.
have that I can do it. And he said, well, I mean, okay, you can come if you want, but we've already got our guy. I think it's going to work out. But they weren't averse to meeting with me and hanging out,
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had me come over to, I believe it was Terry's house. Came to Terry's house. And we were hanging out in Terry's room. We shot the shit for a while. It was just me, Bill, Terry, and Chuck. And so then before I left, I set up my boombox, and I had this little thing called a Tom Schultz Rockman. And it was kind of like what, kids might equate today to like a Line 6 pod.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
One of those little things you can just play guitar into without an amp,
Yeah.
and I was able, this particular boombox had a way, boomboxes, yeah, half the people listening to this probably anyone under 30 right now probably like, what? A what?
Yeah, what the hell is that?
A what box? Had a boombox, and I had Leprosy and Scream on cassette, and I had a way to inject. It had like an input where you could sort of inject something and mix it with it, and so I set it up, played the tape, and I just played along with it right there in Terry's bedroom. And I played along with like 4 or 5 songs. When it came to the solos, I knew Chuck was over the bar solos, so I didn't even put the bar in my guitar.
Oh, okay.
And I played just my own solos whenever it would be Rick playing. So I just had to play over them. But I played the songs, and I guess I played them really good, and I guess he liked my soloing, and they were like, yeah, dude, wow, you're really good, man. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll call you if something happens, but, it was kind of implied, but don't hold your breath. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And mostly it was just a hang, looking at records and listening to some records and stuff. And
Yeah, sure.
back when people used to actually get together
Yeah.
and do that kind of thing. And so I left and went back up to Atlanta. I mean, I was just really bummed out,
Yeah, of course.
about the whole thing. And I think I was back like 3-4 days, and I was back working at the landscaping job. And all of a sudden, here comes, I kind of distantly hear the phone ring. Here comes Dave on my door again. Oh, it's Chuck again, dude. It's evil Chuck again, dude. And I was like, okay. And I went and picked up the phone. I was like, oh, wait, what's up? And he goes, dude, Mark did not work out. He just did not. And I was just like, well, what happened? Playing or no, he played good, but he was just unreliable. He canceled 2 rehearsals in a row. Like
there you go.
For like his second and third rehearsals ever with the band, he called in, oh, I'm not going to be able to make it. I got this or that going on.
Yep.
And they were just like, bye-bye.
Yeah,
and
sure.
they called me and said, dude, you've already tried out. You got the gig.
Right on.
Just come on down. And I was like, I'm going to start packing my car as soon as I got off the phone with you.
Yeah.
I packed my guitar. I packed my car. And then I woke up the next day and hopped in my car and took off. And,
right, man.
Was in death and immediately entered into the rehearsals for Spiritual and immediately started writing. And that's sort of how that happened.